Hey everyone, and welcome to our sixth episode of our Fundamentals for Success series in our Love Strong podcast. If you haven't guessed it, I've got a guest today, Stephanie Thomas, our production manager over Finish. Basically, for everyone that doesn't, because I still was learning exactly what that meant, everything that doesn't involve a MIG welder, she takes care of, from the painting to the electrical accessories, hydraulics, axles, flooring, any specialized add-on that isn't welded. She oversees that function operation to get them ready to ship. So thanks for coming on today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So I don't know if you noticed, but it's a fellow wooer. There's only a few people at Diamond C that have the strength that we call woo, which means that we like people and we like to talk. So this is going to be a 2-hour episode. No,
it could be.
It might be. We're going to have to really struggle to keep it inside the time frame. But no, this week we're talking about fundamental number 24, watch out for one another. And I'm going to read it word for word so we don't lose any of the intentionality or, the purpose that it was really written. And it says, like a good neighbor, keep an eye out for one another. Watch out for safety risks, life hazards, and potential issues, and keep your teammates ahead. Give your teammates a heads up. See, that's why you got to read it. Give your teammates a heads up to help them avoid pitfalls and find the best paths for progress. Share your best practices. So, Stephanie, and when you're working over there in the Finish department and really overseeing all of that, what in that role, what jumps out to you as it pertains to this fundamental? Like when I read that out loud, what jumps out? What strikes your attention?
Well, when I first read it, I always want to say, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. That's the first thing that's going to come out your mind.
100%.
If you read this, that's what's going to pop out. But, that's kind of the very first sentence, that look like a good neighbor, keep an eye out for one another. It really is what resonates with me in this fundamental. In Philippians 2:4, it says, let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. And I think that's key. That's the key part of this fundamental for me and for my team. And in my position is to lead, to grow, to help each other, to build those relationships, to make sure that they know I have their back. And then once I can teach that to them, they can teach that to their next levels and their next levels. So Absolutely. It's super important.
Absolutely. And I love that you pulled the verse out, because, when you think about leadership and you think about just being successful, and, we talk about this in a lot of podcasts, and we talk about it in a lot of leadership development, that being a leader is not a title, right? No. You don't have to have direct reports and a chart of accountability to be a leader, right? And when we talk about being a leader, we preach servant leadership. And what a better example than to pull, direct quotes and scripture to warrant these fundamentals of success. And so you talk about being interested, or direct quote of what it said, having the care of the interests of others, or what did it say?
Yeah, look out not only for your own interests, but also the interests of others.
Right, absolutely. And so, I thought that was just was screaming in my mind, servant leadership, right? Looking out for the interest of others, not only in their, ability to do the job well, but also in their progression, their career, their development as a person. And you Absolutely. Said that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's funny you said like a good neighbor. On my sheet when I was constructing this, I copied and pasted the fundamental word for word, and it must have left out the L. And like a good neighbor, Stephanie came and wrote the L on my paper so that it would be there. So, I think she's a great example of watching out for one another. I thought that was hilarious that there would be a unique example right here in the moment of watching out for one another. So let's talk about this fundamental in action. Let's talk about when we're working day to day in Diamond C, what are some ways that you really try and be intentional about watching out for one another, about sharing best practices, being a good neighbor? Do you have any examples or thoughts on that?
Well, in my position, I have to work with a lot of different leaders of the organization. And if we have a good relationship, it's very easy to take care of them. And they do the same for me. And so what I like to do is try to teach that to my next levels, and so that they can carry that on. As one person, you can't touch everybody's life, but if you can at least touch one, they can move on. And then all of a sudden it's a ripple effect, right? And so, it doesn't take effort to be kind. And I think we all struggle with that sometimes. And sometimes we get very selfish, sometimes when we do things. And so sometimes it's not always intentional to watch out for someone. But if you can make that a mindset, if you can control that and realize when you're wrong, step up and make those right decisions and say you're sorry. Hey. That trust is a big thing for watching out for one another, because if you don't have trust in that relationship, they don't think you have their back.
Absolutely.
We're not out here fighting against the enemy out here. We're literally living it with each other. And we're not fighting against anyone. And so when we don't get along in each group, in each department, in the organization, it's like we're fighting in a war. This is kind of crazy, but as I was thinking about this, watch out for one another. I kind of think about Forrest Gump and Bubba. They're sitting in the water, they're sitting in the trenches in the war, and he's like, "Hey, man, you lean against me, and I'll lean against you. We don't have to lay our heads in the water." Like, that's the ultimate watching out for one another.
Right.
I'm watching one way, you're watching the other, and we don't have to lay down together. We get to take care of each other. We get to watch each other's back. And that's what I really think about when I work with guys like Ivan over in main production. If we're not working, together
right.
fluently, we're going to fail. And we hope that we take that relationship and we can push it on to our next levels.
I love that example. I love the Forrest Gump reference, because it's something everyone can relate to. One of the most watched movies ever made. And you talk about your and Ivan's relationship and how, you're very much segmented in different production aspects of, weld and finish and main production and paint and accessories. But you go back to the Forrest Gump reference. If you and Ivan are not watching out for each other, right? If you're not keeping both your heads out of the water, then both of you are in the trenches, right?
Absolutely.
You're both down. It's because if Ivan's having a rough day today or he's having a rough week, well, you're going to have a rough week next week, right? And it's
right.
just going to flow. So and that's a great example of not only personal but business relation and why it's so important for not only personal success when we talk about fundamentals for success, but also success of Diamond C, success of a business is, you really have to create that relationship and that synergy and then share those best practices and watch out for one another and communicate and over communicate, because, if you don't help those around you, those supporting departments or the departments you feed or that feed you, well, you're just going to end up in the mess with them,
Absolutely.
And you're going to end up, the company will end up being worse off for it. And so, man, I love the example in Forrest Gump. See, that's gold. That's what happens when you get wooers in here. You get Forrest Gump reference.
Well, it talks about woo, and there's several of those strengths kind of really wrap into that. But that relationship building is, it'll drive anything that you're trying to do. I mean, whether you're watching somebody's back, you're staying positive, like whatever the fundamentals are, that
right.
They always seem to have a way each week to represent what's happening in your life or what's happening at Diamond C. It is crazy
at any moment, right?
Yeah, it's almost eerie the way sometimes it kind of falls into place.
It's funny you say that because as I work in the realm of leadership development and working with all our leaders and trying to come up with evaluation metrics and trainings and all that, and you tend to want to try and create something new and do something different, and I always just end up, after I create something or work on something, realize that I'm just doing this fundamental or a combination of fundamental that I worked all this time to not just copy and paste when it was sitting right there for my tools. So it's like they're there for a reason, and that's why we're doing this podcast on them and why we preach them so heavily here at Diamond C, is because
absolutely
the reality is they're unavoidable truths, for success, and it's not our way or this is the way that we think is best, and it's just a reality that if you're not watching out for one another or practicing human connection or whatever fundamental it is that you want to apply, then something's going to fall apart. You're going to be leaving opportunity on the table. And so
absolutely.
So let's talk about, and one thing that I really try and strive for in here is getting to that next level of fundamentals for success. Is because for me in my personal life and what I do, I spend a lot of time reading these and working with these and teaching these and preaching these. But oftentimes I still find myself straying even in my line of work where I'm doing a podcast, I'm, running trainings, I'm, sending out weekly awards and doing all these things that are fundamental of success focused. I mean, every day I'm working with some sort of fundamental for success and trying to embed that culture in the community. And I still find myself straying. And so one thing that brought to my attention and really wanted me to bring to the podcast is this idea or the conversation of how do you catch yourself when you're not watching out for one another? What's a red flag to say, hey, I'm probably not living this fundamental right now to get back on track? Because, you use the scripture reference, and we're all born to sin. We're all going to stray, and it's about the walk and about the intentionality of keeping up with it. So how can we look in the mirror in a moment and say, okay, am I really making my decisions based on fundamental number 24, watch out for one another?
I think it's that daily reality check that if you're not doing that, if you're not having that daily clarity break, I'm not saying take an hour, but I'm saying that you have to sit down at some point and think, what am I doing? Am I moving people in the direction at which they're going to be successful? And then I had to think about myself too, right? We had to think about ourselves at some point, because if I'm not making myself be successful, there's no way I can make you successful.
Absolutely. Foundational.
And it's sometimes it's hard to do. I was listening to a podcast earlier, and he was talking about, I don't have time. Well, that's untrue.
Right.
That's untrue. We have time for the things that we need to do, and taking care of you is part of that time, right? And so that, I think that goes into all those fundamentals, but really for that watch out for one another, are we watching out for one another? Are we trying to be successful and do it on our own? Because that's not leadership. Doing things, why did we make that decision? Was it a selfish decision because I didn't want to work, or because I wanted to do less?
Did we not trust somebody?
Did we not trust somebody?
Absolutely.
Did we not build a relationship with that person? Who's being affected by our actions? And I think it's a very quick thought. 5 minutes of your day to sit back and think, running through those fundamentals, just looking at them. I have them posted by my desk, so I'll occasionally turn over to my desk and look and just say, you weren't being very positive today.
Yeah. Maintain a positive attitude.
Was not very nice.
Yeah.
And then I have to, kind of buck up and go apologize and or send that text message that says, hey, I was wrong, and to get that trust back, that they know that you do have their back. And so you can see it. You can see it when you walk through the, in your personal life or here at Diamond C. You can see that when people don't trust and they don't think that somebody has their back, they don't work hard. They don't work hard. They don't want to be here.
They don't listen.
We don't listen well. That's for sure. And stepping on my toes right here, but that's exactly right. We don't listen. We don't care what other people have to say. And if you don't care, you don't have passion for what you do, you are not watching anybody's back.
Absolutely.
You're only watching your own. And at that point, you're going to fail.
Absolutely. And, there was one thing you talked about in, building the relationships and watching out for one another. And I think it's crucial to hammer on that point that the scripture that you bring in and all the leadership development doesn't say sacrifice yourself for others. Servant leadership does not mean drive yourself into the gutter, into the ditch, working hard to do everything for everyone else, because the reality of it is, if you're not taking care of yourself and making sure that you're aligned and you're getting rest and sleep and clarity breaks and all that, then you're not able to watch out for one another.
Absolutely.
As selfish as that sounds, and it kind of gets that negative connotation that it's like, oh, do for others first. That's great. And that is we should absolutely put ourselves in the position that we can give and do for others. But the reality is that if, you want to talk about personal life as a parent or as a leader, if we're not getting sleep, if we're not healthy, if we're sick, if we are not taking clarity breaks, if we're in a position that we don't enjoy, if we've put ourselves as professionals in the wrong seat, we took a job for the wrong reasons, for rewards instead of passion, like you said, then no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to watch out for one another, because we're going to end up not being able to have our interests and ourself as a foundation for others to stand on. And that's what I really want to hammer in, because it's such a misconception in leadership development or servant leadership. And it's not about compromising yourself for others' interest.
Absolutely.
It's that fundamental win-win. It goes into relationship building too. You know, the idea that I need to be getting out of myself, or getting for my interest, myself, my, you know, mental, spiritual, physical needs, so that I can be the best leader. I can be the best foundation for all of my team, and then raise them up. And I love that you brought that up, because that's just something that's so, I use this word misconceived again, but it's just something that even whether it's a parent or a supervisor or a leader or a friend, right? Anytime that we're not at our best, we're missing opportunity to give, and things that we can't give to them because we are hungry, or we are tired, or we are starved for growth, or whatever it is. And so,
well, when you look down the list of fundamentals, these aren't things that are just for other people. They're for you.
Absolutely.
They're for you as a person. And if you are a good example of them, you barely have to teach them, because you show them. And that's your way of teaching. And that's, you know, that they're there to make you better. So is that selfish? No. It makes you better. It makes your team better. And it's not to sit here and say that I'm just the most excellent at all the fundamentals, because I'm not. I'm absolutely not. And I struggle with them every single day. And, you know, some are harder than others. Some of them are easy, you know. You know, if you have siblings, or, you know, or cousins, or anybody that or nieces and nephews, or children that you take care of, it's very easy to watch out for their back, right? So it shouldn't be any different for people that you trust outside of
Right.
your family. So.
Right. And I mean, I think that if there's one takeaway from that area that I want our listeners to get, is this concept of that retrospective mindset, to say, okay, I made a decision, right? It wasn't a conscious decision to not watch out for one another, but you go back and you reevaluate and you say, you know what? I wasn't watching out. I wasn't sharing best practices. I was operating in a low trust environment.
Yeah.
And I got to fix that. And having the checking your ego at the door, right? There's always a fundamental for it. Checking your ego at the door, and send that text message and be like, hey, so that wasn't, I shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. Or, hey, I apologize for this, or, hey, you really should know this.
Right.
You know,
and I don't think that's showing that you don't have initiative either. And I think that's one of those negative things that gets put in there. Is it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to fail. It's okay to be a little bit weak. It doesn't make you
necessary.
It doesn't make you any less of a leader. It actually makes you a stronger leader. And I think that check your ego at the door really kind of plays right into that. Watch out for one another, because we have to be less prideful. We have to carry our pride way over there, you know, and just kind of throw it out the window when it comes to leadership, because it's not about that. It's not about our pride. It's about taking care of each other.
I think once you acknowledge that there's only been one person to walk this earth that didn't fail, that didn't make a mistake, or that didn't let people down.
Yeah.
Once you acknowledge that, then you say, okay, everybody else has failed at some point. You know, we don't want to fail. We want to do our best, but we also have to take those clarity breaks and have that retrospect to say, didn't do it. Know, didn't hold myself up to that standard. And you know, that goes in with the last week, what we talked about with Valentine, or 2 weeks ago, about being relentless about progress. And that, you know, that lives in this as well. If you want to really make sure that you're watching out for one another, you got to take a step back and analyze your decisions. And that's part of being relentless about progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, that was amazing stuff. I loved how we got into the scripture. I love how we got into, you know, real world analysis. And so as we wrap this podcast up, a couple things that you said that I really want to make sure that our listeners take with them is, you know, one, it jumps out to you like a good neighbor. You know, it's a mindset, is what you said, of really trying to be somebody that other people can draw inspiration or rely on or trust. You know, being that person and being that good neighbor is someone that is foundational in the relationships around you, because you take care of yourself first, and you're always in that position that you're strong enough for others to lean on you when they need to. When you're in the trenches and in the fight in the army, and you and your next door neighbor are laying down in the water, you can lean your head on each other.
Yeah, get your head up.
Get your head up. The second thing we talked about was the aspect to working side by side, and it kind of leads in from the fun Forrest Gump reference of really looking for opportunities to where you and your peers can lean on each other, because oftentimes it makes your day twice as easy because they're in a better position to handle certain things than you are. And, and
Absolutely.
certain things you need the support from other departments. You think about, in the finish department, you got to have the support of purchasing. You got to have the support of inventory. You got to have the support of shipping and weld. I mean, everything.
Oh, those support teams are crucial to success for all of us. And I think they get, the short end of things sometimes. But the reality of it is those are the ones that you need to have their back, even when it's going wrong. Absolutely.
Yep. And so all those are foundational. Look for opportunities to lean on each other. And then the last thing, when you're reevaluating yourself and you really want to live this fundamental, you got to step back and look at the things that you've done as you're doing them, get those clarity breaks and say, did I really share best practices? Was I really as good of a neighbor as I could have? Did I open up the opportunities to find the best paths for progress, as something that says? And so if we're not having that humility to go back and say, could I have been better? Could I have helped them more? Could I have done this a little bit more in the context of this fundamental number 24? Then we're really never going to catch ourselves as we stray. And like every day we don't go back and reevaluate ourselves is a day that we have an opportunity to stray further and further from servant leadership or from walking with these fundamentals, if you will, so if you're going to take anything from this podcast, I hope that you can take those 3 things back with you into your personal life and really apply those. And I hope that it helps you be a little more successful. And, successful doesn't mean getting that raise or getting the promotion or, hitting a home run every ball game or whatever your Super Bowl is right now. That doesn't mean that if you don't get everything that you ever desired that you weren't successful. It means if you helped somebody else, if you watched out for one another, if you made someone else's life, job, day a little bit better, then you were successful.
Absolutely.
And and we've got to reevaluate that metric. And so thank you, Stephanie. It was awesome. Great content. I really appreciate having you on. Thank y'all for tuning in. Next week, we'll be doing episode number 7, a full week's worth of content. Number 25, think process oriented. And she mentioned Ivan, the head of Weld and the head of main production, and he'll be my guest and talking about process orientation and how to think like that and how he uses that in daily life. So definitely not anything you want to miss. So until then, these 2 words, we're going to go talk to everybody. Y'all have a great week.
Have a good day.